The tech industry just witnessed a seismic shift that nobody saw coming, and it has reportedly left Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella in a state of absolute fury. We are talking about a massive, coordinated move where the governments of 14 different U.S. states have officially signed executive orders to begin the immediate transition away from Windows, opting instead for customized Linux distributions across their entire administrative infrastructure. This isn't just a minor trial or a small pilot program in a couple of offices. This is a full-scale evacuation of the Microsoft ecosystem by major government entities, representing millions of workstations, critical databases, and public service portals. If you think this is just about saving a few dollars on licensing fees, you are missing the much bigger and much more stunning reality of what is happening behind closed doors in state capitals from coast to coast. For decades, Microsoft has held a near monopoly on government contracts, creating a golden cage of dependency that seemed unbreakable. But a series of private security audits and a growing demand for digital sovereignty have finally pushed state legislators over the edge. In the next 20 minutes, we are going to break down the specific security failures that triggered this mass exodus, the secret meetings that led to the selection of Linux, and why Satya Nadella is reportedly scrambling to stop a domino effect that could bankrupt Microsoft's enterprise division. This is the moment the Windows monopoly started to crumble, and the details are more shocking than you can imagine. To understand why Satya Nadella is so furious, you have to understand the sheer scale of the financial loss. When a single state like California or Texas moves its infrastructure, we are talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in recurring revenue. But 14 states doing it simultaneously? That is a Category 5 hurricane hitting Microsoft's balance sheet. The states involved, ranging from tech hubs to industrial heartlands, have cited persistent vulnerability cycles as their primary reason for the switch. For years, these governments have been trapped in a loop of patching and praying, where every Windows update meant to fix an old problem seemingly introduced 3 new ones. The stunning discovery that these state IT departments made was that they were spending more money fixing Windows than they were actually using it to serve the public. They realized that the cost of maintenance in a closed-source environment was a drain on taxpayer funds that could no longer be justified. The breaking point reportedly came during a classified cybersecurity summit, where state CTOs were presented with evidence of deep kernel insecurities that Microsoft had failed to address for over 18 months. While Nadella has been pushing AI integration and Copilot as the future of Windows, government officials were more concerned with the fact that their core systems were leaking metadata like a sieve. The US government has historically been Microsoft's most loyal customer, but even loyalty has its limits when national security and data integrity are at stake. The switch to Linux isn't just a software change, it's a declaration of independence. By moving to an open-source architecture, these 14 states are taking back control of their own digital destiny. They can now audit every single line of code, ensuring that no shadow backdoors or corporate telemetry can interfere with the privacy of their citizens. Insiders at Microsoft's Redmond headquarters describe the mood as pure chaos. Satya Nadella has reportedly held emergency meetings with the public sector sales teams, demanding to know how they let this happen. The stunning truth is that Microsoft's aggressive push into subscription-based cloud services backfired. These 14 states didn't want their data stored on Azure servers where Microsoft could analyze it for optimization. They wanted local control. When Microsoft signaled that future versions of Windows would be even more cloud-dependent, the states decided it was time to leave the Microsoft garden forever. This is a revolt against the subscription model, and it is sending shockwaves through every boardroom in Silicon Valley. What does the Linux infrastructure look like for these states? They aren't just installing a standard version of Ubuntu and calling it a day. They are developing what is being called State OS, a hardened, highly customized version of Linux built on a zero-trust architecture. This stunning new system is designed to be modular, meaning that if one part of the system is compromised, the rest of the network remains impenetrable. Unlike Windows, where a single kernel exploit can bring down an entire department, State OS uses sandboxed environments for every application. The Apple engineers who recently exposed Microsoft's Windows 12 cover-up have reportedly been consulted by these state governments to ensure that their new Linux systems are truly invisible to external trackers. The economic blow to Microsoft is only the tip of the iceberg. The real danger, according to tech analysts, is the loss of talent and loss of precedence. If 14 states can successfully run a modern government on Linux, the myth that Windows is the only business-ready OS is dead. This opens the door for the private sector to follow suit. Fortune 500 companies are already watching these 14 states with intense curiosity. If the transition is smooth, we could see a mass migration of corporate America to Linux within the next 3 years. This is why Nadella is furious. He isn't just losing 14 customers, he is losing the foundation of his empire. The stunning reality is that Linux is no longer a hobbyist's operating system. It is becoming the new standard for professional computing. Let's dive into the internal memos that have leaked from the Florida and Ohio IT departments. These documents reveal a deep disdain for Microsoft's forced update policy. One memo stated that the inability to control when our systems reboot or what features are added without our consent is a liability to public safety. This loss of autonomy is a recurring theme in the Linux exodus. In a state-run environment, you cannot have a critical 911 dispatch terminal suddenly decide to update to the latest version of Copilot in the middle of an emergency. The stunning arrogance of Microsoft's home user features being forced onto mission-critical systems was a key driver for this state-level divorce. Nadella's fury is also directed at the hardware manufacturers. Companies like Dell and HP are now being pressured by these 14 states to provide Linux-certified hardware at scale. For years, these manufacturers have had sweetheart deals with Microsoft to pre-install Windows on every machine. But with the US government demanding Windows-free laptops, the manufacturers are forced to pivot. This stunning shift in the supply chain means that the Windows tax is finally being challenged. Soon, you might be able to buy a high-end laptop at a lower price because you aren't paying for a Windows license you don't want. This is a market correction that Microsoft never thought would happen in its dominant territory. The stunning part of this Linux migration is the cost efficiency. Initial reports from the state of Tennessee suggest that they will save nearly $60 million in the first year alone, just by eliminating licensing audits. Microsoft is notorious for its aggressive auditing teams that fine governments for even the smallest license discrepancies. By moving to Linux, these states are effectively firing Microsoft's compliance officers. They are taking that money and reinvesting it into local tech talent to maintain their own systems, further incentivizing the move away from big tech centralization. Microsoft is reportedly trying to sabotage the move by claiming that Linux is not secure enough for government work. But this fear-mongering isn't working. The Open Source Security Foundation has already provided plenty of evidence that crowdsourced code is actually more robust because thousands of eyes are constantly looking for vulnerabilities. In contrast, the Windows kernel is a black box where only a small team at Microsoft knows what's really happening. The stunning success of the Linux kernel empowering the entire internet infrastructure and the supercomputer world makes Microsoft's security argument look utterly weak. The 14 states are also implementing a universal training program for their employees. They realized that the learning curve from Windows to a modern Linux desktop like KDE Plasma or GNOME is actually very shallow. Most government work today happens in a web browser. And guess what? A web browser looks and works exactly the same on Linux as it does on Windows. The stunning truth that Microsoft has been trying to hide is that the operating system is becoming irrelevant to the average worker. As long as they can access their tools, they don't care about the underlying kernel. This commoditization of the OS is Satya Nadella's worst nightmare. In the hallowed halls of Redmond, there are whispers of a redesigned Windows that might try to mimic Linux in an attempt to win these states back. They are calling it Windows Core, a version of the OS that is reportedly modular and stripped of all bloatware. But the stunning problem for Microsoft is trust. Once a customer as big as a state government exits the ecosystem due to lack of trust, it is nearly impossible to bring them back. The 14 states have already burnt the boats. They have invested in the infrastructure and the personnel for Linux. They aren't coming back for a slightly better Windows. They are investing in the long game. Wait until you hear about the international reaction. Governments in Europe and Asia are watching this US Linux experiment with stunning intensity. If 14 US states can prove that Linux is enterprise-ready for a modern democracy, the Western monopoly of Microsoft will collapse globally. Germany, which has flirted with Linux in the past, is reportedly preparing a new directive based on the American model. Satya Nadella is furious because he knows that if he loses the West, he loses the world. This isn't just a local policy change. It's a global shift in galactic power within the tech industry. The stunning tactical error Microsoft made was underestimating the states. They thought they could lobby their way out of this crisis. But state governors are increasingly tech-savvy, and they are surrounded by young, open-source first advisors who grew up with Linux. These advisors see Microsoft not as a partner, but as an old-world landlord charging exorbitant rent for leaky properties. This generational shift in leadership is exposing the outdated business model of proprietary software. The 14 states are just the first wave of a new era of computing. Microsoft's stock price has already started to show nervousness. While the AI hype is keeping it afloat for now, institutional investors are starting to ask hard questions about the enterprise retention rate. If government contracts start to evaporate, the high valuation of Microsoft is at serious risk. Nadella's fury is a symptom of fear. He knows that the Windows 11 launch failed to regain the trust of IT managers, and Windows 12 is already tainted by the Apple engineer exposure. The US government's move to Linux is the final proof that the Windows era might be approaching its horizon. Let's look at the technical forensics of what these states found in their final Windows audits. They discovered that Windows Defender and other security suites were recording and transmitting an excessive amount of internal network data to Microsoft headquarters under the guise of threat intelligence. One state security officer described it as corporate espionage disguised as antivirus. This stunning level of intrusiveness was the last straw. The state governments realized that they were paying Microsoft to spy on them. By switching to Linux, they are closing the blinds on Microsoft's surveillance engine. The 14 states are also collaborative. They have formed a cooperative council to share the cost of development for their new Linux-based tools. Instead of each state paying Microsoft for the same software, they are sharing code for free. This stunning model of cooperative governance is a massive threat to the commercial software industry. If governments start building and sharing their own tools, the market for enterprise software will shrink overnight. This is why Satya Nadella is furious. The rules of the game are being rewritten by the players, and Microsoft is no longer the referee. The stunning resilience of Linux in this transition is proving that open source is the only secure path for the future. The 14 states are reporting that their incident response times have actually decreased since the switch. Because they have full access to the source code, they can fix vulnerabilities in real time without waiting for a Tuesday patch from Redmond. This agility is something that proprietary software can never match. It is a stunning demonstration of technical superiority over corporate bureaucracy. As this Linux revolution continues to expand, the question becomes, who is next? Rumors are circulating that the US Department of Justice is considering a similar audit of its own Windows infrastructure. If the federal government joins the 14 states, it will be the stunning end of an era. Satya Nadella is reportedly planning a personal trip to DC to lobby against this migration. But after these 14 states showed how much money and security can be gained by dropping Windows, the political will to protect Microsoft is dissolving. We are witnessing the rebirth of the personal computer as a tool of the people rather than a terminal for a corporation. The US government's choice to embrace Linux is a stunning victory for transparency and public service. While Satya Nadella might be furious, the taxpayers should be celebratory. They are finally getting a government infrastructure that is secure, efficient, and independent. The biggest tech cover-up and the biggest corporate monopoly are both being challenged at the same time. The stunning truth is that the future of computing is open, and there is no turning back. In the war for the desktop, Linux just won a decisive battle. The 14 states have exposed the weakness of the Windows empire. From the hidden backdoors to the exorbitant licensing fees, the reasons to leave were overwhelming. Satya Nadella's fury is the sound of a CEO realizing that the world has changed. The Windows 12 cover-up was the spark, and the Linux migration is the fire. Keep your eyes on the state capitals. The digital revolution is live, and it is stunningly successful. The transition is not without its challenges, of course. Legacy applications developed decades ago for Windows need to be refactored. But even here, the stunning power of compatibility layers like Wine and Proton is making the impossible possible. These states are finding that they can run 95% of their legacy apps on Linux with better performance than they had on Windows. This technical miracle is the last nail in the coffin for the Windows monopoly. The stunning part is that gaming technology created the tools that are now saving the US government hundreds of millions of dollars. As we wrap up this epic saga, remember that knowledge is power. The 14 states took the time to learn the truth about their software, and they acted on it. You can do the same. Whether you are a home user or a business owner, the Linux alternative is ready for prime time. The Fury in Redmond is a sign of Microsoft's declining influence. The future is open source, secure, and autonomous. The stunning choice made by 14 US states is just the beginning. Welcome to the age of Linux, where the user is finally back in the driver's seat. The Windows era was a long road, but we have finally arrived at a better destination. Stay informed, stay tech-savvy, and never be afraid to switch to a better way of computing. The stunning reality is that freedom is only an installation away.